If you're thinking about moving to Phoenix, there's one question that is constantly on your mind. Will you be happy when you get here? For 18 years, I dreamed about moving to Arizona, but I constantly talked myself out of it because I was afraid that the answer to that question might be no. I finally worked up the courage to move here from Oregon in 2021, and since then, I've helped hundreds of families relocate to Phoenix too. And what I've learned is that there's really just 3 things that decide whether or not you'll enjoy living here. So in this video, I'm going to show you what those are and how you can dramatically increase your odds of being happy here too. Okay, so this first one, in my opinion, is probably the least important of the 3, but it's also everyone's biggest fear about living in Phoenix, so we need to talk about it. But it's much easier to handle than you think. Let me show you. So let's say that instead of moving to Phoenix, you're thinking about going to Alaska. Would you walk outside in the dead of winter, dressed like this? I'm gonna take it on faith that's a no. You'd prepare yourself for that environment by getting one of these big, thick winter coats and a hat to help you tolerate the brutal cold. Wait, I live in Phoenix. Now, obviously here, we have the opposite problem, and your ability to handle the summer heat is the first thing that will decide whether you'll enjoy living here or not. And a simple change of clothes won't mean that you'll be able to sit comfortably in the 118-degree heat. But the solution to this is the same as moving to Alaska. You have to prepare for the environment that you're going to be living in. And funny enough, a lot of people will try to talk you out of the easiest way to do this. Let's say that I'm a wilderness-hardened native Alaskan, and I tell you, you don't need a coat to make it through winter. Then what if I pointed out how expensive it is to buy a really nice coat? And then there's all the effort to keep it clean and in good shape so that it keeps the cold out. Plus, your house and your vehicle will have heaters, so you can still be comfortable. So when I point all those things out, would that convince you that you don't need a coat? Get out of here. Well, no, it wouldn't. But if you're moving to Phoenix and looking at houses that don't have a pool in the backyard, you're making the same mistake as someone moving to Alaska without a coat. And this is where people start saying,
pools are too expensive.
Or,
you don't want to deal with all that maintenance.
but let me show you exactly how much it costs me to run my pool. So this is my water bill from the month before it was finished, and you can see right here that we paid just over $35 for our water that month. Then after it was done and we filled it up, our water bill did jump up to $78 for the next month. But then it came back down to $51 for the next bill, and look, our water charge actually went down to the same $35 we were paying before the pool had a drop of water in it, and after that, it's pretty much stayed there ever since. As for the maintenance, I spend about 20 minutes each week taking care of my pool. I add chemicals about every 3 days, and then I skim the water and brush the sides about once a week, and that is it. This idea that a pool is really expensive and time-consuming to maintain just isn't true. And we use ours pretty much every day in the summer, and it makes a huge difference in your quality of life here. Whenever I hear someone say,
Oh, I hate the summers. The heat is just unbearable.
I always ask them, do you have a pool? And the answer is always,
No.
But every time I even mention a pool in a video, the comment section will erupt with people trying to use another argument to talk you out of it, which is,
Pools waste so much water and we're about to run out.
let me show you why that's not true. So this glass represents the amount of water the state of Arizona uses each year. And this is the amount of water that's set aside for residential use, which is 26%. And out of that, this is the amount that's used for swimming pools, which is 1.6% of the residential supply. Also, Arizona isn't going dry. The state actually uses about the same amount of water today as it did back in the late 1950s, even though we have an extra 6.5 million people living here now. That's because we know that we live in a desert and water is precious. And in the 1980s, the state took action to conserve our water supply and improve the technology to reuse what we already have. So just know that buying a house with a pool isn't leading Arizona down a path to destruction. And honestly, having one is going to be the difference between hating summer and wishing you'd never moved here and being excited that the weather is warming up so that you can go get in the pool again. But as much attention as the heat gets, this next one plays a much bigger part in making sure you'll actually be happy when you move here. And I think a big reason why so many people get this wrong is because they're not used to the amount of choice they have here. Let me show you what I mean, because this was a huge shock to us. So when I first bought a house back in Oregon, choosing a place to live was like ordering food at Raising Cane's, where literally they only have two things on the menu: chicken fingers and a chicken sandwich. And most of the neighborhoods were just as simple. Some had an HOA, others didn't, and the ones with an HOA usually had a little community park with a playground and maybe a basketball court. So when we came to Arizona, it was like being handed the menu from the Cheesecake Factory with over 250 things to choose from. There were simple neighborhoods like we were used to, but then there were these mega communities with resort pools and clubhouses, and even areas with huge luxury homes or acreage properties that were minutes away from everything. And the problem is that when you have so many types of neighborhoods to choose from, it is like scanning that huge menu from the Cheesecake Factory trying to pick out what you want. It's not easy. So how do you make the right choice? Well, to start, you need to focus on the kind of lifestyle you want to have here. This is always the first thing that I talk to my clients about when we're doing a relocation call, because getting this right plays the biggest part in your happiness when you move here. And it's also very easy to fall in love with a neighborhood online without really knowing whether or not you'll fit in there. My client Landon was also moving here from Oregon, and he found a community that seemed perfect to him because the houses were exactly what he was looking for. One of his big priorities was having an RV garage for his boat, and so I went to do a video walkthrough of the property for him. And while I was out there, one of the neighbors was out in the driveway. So I went over to ask him some questions about what it was like living in the community. Now, he had nothing but good things to say about it, but it turns out that it would have been a terrible fit for Landon and his family. I actually use a 4-part system to help people match neighborhoods with their lifestyle, and if you want to see how it works, I put a link down in the description for you. But after going through that with Landon, he saw that this place didn't check enough boxes. He had 4 young kids and wanted to live somewhere that they'd have friends nearby. But that neighbor told me that there really weren't many kids in the community. And when I sent the video to Landon, he was a little disappointed because he loved the house so much, but he also knew that the neighborhood just wasn't a match for his lifestyle, and he would have regretted buying a home there. So if you see a house that you think you'll love, make sure you're doing some extra digging to get a feel for the neighborhood. Because when you land in a place full of people who live the way that you want to live, that's when Phoenix finally starts to feel like home. But there's one thing that can ruin all of this, even if you find the perfect neighborhood, and that's overextending your budget. Being able to afford a nice lifestyle is the third thing that decides whether or not you'll be happy living in Phoenix. And getting a good idea for how much that costs isn't easy. A ton of people want to move here because they think it'll give them huge savings on their cost of living, but you might be pretty surprised at how expensive some things are. And you should watch this video next, where I'll give you the actual numbers from what I spend on my own bills so that you don't end up with sticker shock when you move here.